What's up, guys? We should be live. Sorry for the slightly late start. We had some technical issues over here. So just waiting for confirmation that we're live. We are. Cool. We got 13 people here already. That's great. Cool. So welcome to this week's Deep Dive Live. We're kind of expecting a bigger turnout than usual. We had a lot more people RSVP for this one. These streams are usually just aimed at our Chinese learning audience, but I actually sent out an invite to our Japanese audience as well, since this one is going to have some stuff that's relevant to you guys too. So if this is your first Deep Dive Live, welcome. This is a series we're doing on YouTube where we every couple of weeks we'll sort of dive deep on different topics related to language learning, mostly Mandarin learning, but also general topics like the importance of pronunciation, how to improve your pronunciation, how to acquire grammar patterns, how to use conversation to improve your language learning, things like that. So this week we're talking about fonts, and not just fonts, but because a lot of times you'll see, I see online where people will say like, oh, what's the difference between this character and this character? And it's the same character, but they're rendered in different fonts. Or you'll see somebody ask, why is this guo written this way, like the character for country, when I learned it this other way, and it's a simplified versus traditional distinction. But what you'll see is native speakers will say, it's the same thing, it's just a font. But font actually means something different in English than ziti in Chinese. So ziti refers to sort of character forms in general, whereas font has a very specific meaning. So we're going to talk about all those distinctions today. Fonts versus glyphs, a term you may have seen, and some issues with computing using Chinese characters or kanji. Regional variations, standards that differ between Taiwan, the PRC, Hong Kong, Japan. We'll even look at Korea a little bit. So yeah, it should be a really interesting session, I think. We have some good stuff prepared for you. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on Ash. And the way this one's going to work is Ash is going to cover the first section where he shows sort of some historical context to show that like this idea of character form variation has been happening for as long as there's been Chinese characters, basically. So this idea that there's one real and true form of a character is kind of a modern thing that happened after standardization. And so, yeah, we'll look at some historical context there. Then I'm going to look at the computing issues, different types of fonts, what types of things are handled by fonts versus what's handled by different code points. So we're going to look at some Unicode issues, and I'm not going to get super technical. I'm probably going to oversimplify a bit. If you're a programmer that deals with Unicode on a deep level a lot, it's not going to be super useful for you, but I think for the average learner that gets frustrated with computing issues with Chinese characters sometimes, it'll be really useful. It'll give you some things to think about and some idea of what types of things can lead to the problems that you're experiencing. And then Christine's going to look at some use of font in like shop signs and company logos and handwriting, different styles of handwriting and things like that. So it's a pretty good, pretty broad overview of character form variation, which I think is going to be really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Dr. Ash on. You ready, Dr. Ash? Can you give me a thumbs up or a nod? All right, that's a thumbs up. Let's bring him on. Cool. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you.
Do you have anything you want to say before you get into it? Do you want to give a little preview of what you're going to talk about, or do you just want to bring up your slides and get in it?
I'll kind of talk about it a little bit. First of all, the title of my presentation is not correct.
What is it?
It's not here. Well, I guess you can't see it, but it says what you need to know about character from. Oh no, this is correct. Sorry, I read it wrong. I guess the title is "What You Need to Know About Character Form Variation." I thought it was saying something about what you need to know about character formation, but I guess I just
Oh.
didn't read it. So I used to give talks at ICLP like a couple times a year, and then I like probably for 3 or 4 years I was teaching a character course there. And if you don't know, ICLP is like a super intensive language program in Taipei at National Taiwan University. And one thing I noticed, and I mean, I probably had this problem myself. It's just been so like I'm scared to even tell you how many years ago it was I first started learning character. It makes me sound really old, but
Oh, I believe it
one
was
thing
in
I
the
know.
late 1900s, wasn't
Things I thought you were going to say the late 80s. Like, no, it was the 90s.
it?
But anyway, something I noticed about people in my class and then also people online is that they would notice, like, I even teaching, it's called, in Chinese, you call it Hawaiian School, is the short. Teaching Chinese is a foreign language program. And when I was in that program, somebody was talking about being, well, they're just uber obsessed with every dot and jot and diddle in a character or tittle in a character. So they think that if there's this complex character with a dot at the top that's aimed this way, and then they see another form where it's aimed that way, they think it's a completely different character, and they completely freak out that it's not the same direction. It's just,
Right.
I don't know. But anyway, when I was at Hawaii Council, there's somebody was talking about how uh, my teacher told me, or no, it was a teacher telling me about it. My student told me I was the best teacher because I explained why on ma fa da man ma ma fa da man on ma fa da ma. Eh? No, what could be ma? Anything with this thing.
Yep.
Um, I, I'm not going to try to type right now because there's I don't want to incur any technical difficulties. But
I can pull something
anyway,
up and type it out for you while you're talking.
you can pull, yeah, John can pull it up. So there's some forms that have two trees there, and there's some forms where the things coming down aren't attached to the like cross looking thing, and they're kind of not like on the tree thing. It's usually a straight line, but it's curved. And he went on for like 10 minutes about he's such a great teacher because he explained, or no, required students write it exactly that way. And actually, I think that is probably the original form, and then it turned into tree due to the process of analogy. And analogy is when it's a process of change, and it happens basically in everything: pronunciation, character forms, words, just pretty much anything. But analogy is when there's two things that are really close to each other, and there's not a clear notion as to why they're that close but not the same. A lot of times people just push those things together and make them the same. So because that form looked like very close to tree but wasn't tree, and those that form with the that looks like tree but doesn't have the things attached to it isn't very common, which is probably why they didn't know, hey, why is this written that way when it's written this way in the other places? They thought it was the same thing, and they just kind of pushed this change along to make them the same. Okay, so that's probably why it changed. But the thing is, those forums have been around forever. They're used in different fonts. Different fonts do it differently. And so, one of the main points I wanted to do this whole presentation, or that the three of us, I mean, John actually knows a lot more about actual computer fonts. And so, if you're a Chinese speaker, 字体 in English is not font, unless you're talking about a thing you select in a document on a computer for a specific set of text. That is a font, but otherwise, you're talking about character forms. So, English translation of font into Chinese, a better translation is 电脑字体 or 电脑字形, depending on your flavor of Chinese, I guess.
No.
So anyway, people just would freak out about these tiny changes in characters, and I want to have a presentation where we go into why is there variation there, is it fair? A lot of people somehow think that Chinese people do stuff because they're really trying to make it hard for people learning Chinese. When in actuality, it's like that's not even a thought in their head. They don't care how hard it is for foreigners. Like if
Right.
you told them, "Hey, we're gonna push this legislation through to make characters easier for foreigners to learn," that would never make it through. Nobody would. No, it wouldn't even make it to the floor. Nobody would care enough to try to push such a reform.
Right.
And that's the same with English, right? We have crazy spelling in English. We have gazillions of exceptions to our rules. We have very subtle verb tenses, and we don't care if that's hard for foreigners to learn. We don't change the way we talk to make it easier for foreigners to learn. This is just the nature of language, right? So anyway, the point being is this: there's a ton of variation. That variation to be expected. I mean, really, you just ought to be expected. And don't freak out. Just learn how to. I think actually one of the reasons people freak out is it's people that are just starting their learning and they probably don't know 1,000 characters. But once you know a couple thousand characters, you're probably less uptight about this kind of change because it's just you just probably because you've seen it, but also you're much more confident in your abilities because you know a lot more characters. But people can, I mean, really get uptight about this. Like I met a guy and he was just like angry. He had this deep anger that if you're in a conversation with him about something completely different and characters come up, you like set off this anger about how difficult this is, right? And so like I was learning 草书 it was cool. Just for me, it was cool. Like, oh wow, it's weird that this line that looks so different from this character is actually the same thing.
For anyone learning
And I was trying to show
Japanese,
this guy, and
for anyone learning Japanese, 草书 is cursive.
oh, sorry, yeah, sorry about that.
Yep.
I'm used to giving talks to Chinese people, so it might be Chinese centric,
I'll try to fill in the gaps.
but it's the funny thing is, so I started drawing some forms, and the guy literally is like, "Dude, stop! Just stop!" And like he got visibly just angry, and I was like, "What a weird response to a character form." And then I thought, well, he doesn't have realistic expectations. He doesn't understand the development of the history. He doesn't understand how native speakers view stuff, or maybe he does and doesn't care. I don't know, but he just apparently was so upset by how much effort he had used. Well, the thing is, he didn't really understand characters either. I mean, the guy had actually read books, not papers, books in Chinese, and didn't know about sound components, which is I don't know how you can get that far. Like for me, the first day I started learning Chinese, I learned about sound components because the first character I learned was ma, and then the next like ep ma da ma, and then the next one was shi ma da ma, and then ma ma da ma, and it's like oh. And the thing is, I actually had the idea in my head that there was zero sound relationship between Chinese characters, the form of a character, and the word it's representing. There is this myth that goes around, still actually probably find it on the internet, that says characters are just divorced completely from reality, well, from linguistic reality, from speech reality. I even knew a guy that was teaching his son Chinese and Japanese because he believed that characters had no connection to spoken language, that in the future, when everything was on the internet, because it's the early 90s, when everything was on the internet, that there would be some language that would develop that was basically like a written language that all people of all countries could read. And so he thought Chinese would fill that role. Like I think he was quite wrong, but
Yeah.
anyway, that myth actually persisted. And when I started learning
There's
Chinese,
a
I was
book,
under
I think
the impression.
is it John DeFrancis that wrote the ideographic myth in like the early 90s?
I don't know. I've never read that book, but I've seen it before. Like I've seen the cover of it.
What's interesting, we'll see this in the Unicode section. Even Unicode calls them ideographs.
Yeah, And yeah, actually, so in our dictionary, we say this is a picture of that.
Right.
But that's actually short. That's because it's very convenient to say it that way, and people understand what you're saying. But it's not actually true in the sense that characters are not pictures. If it was a picture, you can draw it however you wanted to, as long as you're drawing the same thing, right? But you can't do that with characters. You have to draw it a certain way. I mean, it doesn't have to be like we're learning in this talk. It doesn't have to be exactly the same way, but it has to be. There's a range of ways you can draw it and still be a character, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably like way too long of an intro, like because I actually planned on only talking a couple minutes and letting John and Christine spend most of the time because John actually knows, like, I know a lot about character forms, but I don't really care about unless I'm having a problem on my computer. Then other than that, I don't care about computer fonts.
Yeah.
Um, although some of the problems that you incur, which actually you'll see in John's talk, it's funny because native speakers have these problems too. Like I go to Chinese church in Tokyo and here, and generally there's a mixture of Hong Kongers, people from the PRC, Taiwanese, Japanese, Malaysians, Singaporeans. So you got people from all different backgrounds, and none of that's a political statement, by the way. I'm just talking about the way I think of it. But so these church bulletins they put out I'm assuming are done by multiple people, but character-wise, complete mess. Like you'll have one sentence with Japanese forms, simplified forms, traditional forms, and then maybe some of you don't know, but the PRC actually has traditional characters. They just have a different standard than traditional characters in Taiwan. And Hong Kong actually has its own standard, which actually is more like the mainland, the PRC standard, but it's not exactly the same. I'm actually pretty familiar with these differences because I have a lot of books that were published in the PRC that are in traditional characters, and so it's actually for me mostly a problem when I'm copying like I didn't mean to. Apparently, the space bar, which is what I use to, because my computer just went to sleep or was turned on the screensaver, so I hit the space bar. But anyway, I totally lost. What was I talking about, John?
Uh, I think I lost the thread too.
John was John was thinking about what his lunch. Uh,
No, I was reading
oh,
comments
just
on it.
different. Yeah, so these church bulletins,
Ah,
complete mess when it comes to you know characters. Like it's not like all Fanti over here and all GNT over here. They're mixed, and I'm assuming that's because one person A writes it in GNT and then translates it. Another somebody else translates it, and then you copy part of a sentence over to some other place, and then you miss a character or something. So anyway, it's if you're agile in your thinking, it's not a problem.
yeah,
But if you're like, oh my god, that stroke's slightly different, it's going to be a big problem.
yeah.
And in fact, one good reason to like accept the fact there's a bunch of variation is it will drastically lower your blood pressure. So it's actually good for your health. Okay, so this is when I used to teach those classes, one of the first day of class. The first day of class after I'd already encountered people who just freak out over differences in character forms. I would present something like this. So which A on here
Ash,
is the real A?
your slides are not on screen, dude. Hang on. I didn't know you were ready to start sharing your slides.
Oh,
Here we go. All right, I'm going to hand it over to you. Have fun.
okay. So which A here is the real A? Okay, well, we're not done yet. Is it one of these? Wow, that's way more pixelated than it looked yesterday. Sorry about that. But look at all these different A's. Like you would think, oh, an A, okay, these are all different A's. what really makes A is that there's a closed off angular thing going on. But then you look over here and you realize, no, it can be round too. Or like this. This is like a, for aesthetics, right? That's not even really a part of identifying the A. The part you're identifying A is here, but this is actually most of the form, right? So like with, and then, we have more A's over here. And none of this bothers anybody. I mean, I've never heard of somebody being angry at the variation in the letter A, or even in any letter of the alphabet for that matter. Well, I'm like kind of, I started learning Russian a long time ago and then dropped it, and I've picked it back up recently. And if you look at the handwritten forms of Russian letters, some of them are actually quite different from the printed version. But I've not had any classes in Russian. Well, that's not true. I did have one at NASA, but I don't remember anybody getting angry about variations in A. But anyway, clearly all these are A. And like I said, nobody gets upset because you're just comfortable in your. I guess we're comfortable in our knowledge of A. We're not insecure about it, and that insecurity. If we were insecure about it, we might be more upset that there's such variation. But what's going on here really is that, well, there's two forms of A. That the two main forms would be the capital and lowercase. But even in lowercase, there's also two main forms. Like this A right here, or this A, is one of the main lowercase forms. But then probably the most standard, I think, would be this form, right? In that other form, this form like right here, which is actually just this thing. It's the bottom half, right, of that thing. So, and another point to make here is, another reason we can have such variation like this is because generally you're not looking at A in a outside of a meaningful context. So even if I didn't recognize one of these forms, but it's in a word that I'm familiar with, I'd be able to probably figure out the word if I understood the rest of the letters in the word, and also understand what meaning. Like if I'm looking at a sentence that's written with this weird, something I consider like unusual text, and I understand the sentence, I don't get this word because I don't know that letter, I'll know what meaning is supposed to go in that slot. I can use that meaning to figure out what word it is, and use what word it is to figure out what letter it is, right? So it's not like you just stick one character up on a wall and then what it is. It's usually going to occur somewhere in a meaningful context, and that meaning can be used. And keep in mind, for native speakers, right? Of course, if you've learned 3 characters, you're not going to be able to do that. But for native speakers, if there's a meaningful context, they'll be able to figure it out most of the time. And if they can't figure it out, it's because, as we've seen here, there's a ton of variation. Even with this letter A, you can write it a gazillion different ways, but you have to remain within a certain range of variation. Like it's not that it can't be infinitely varied. It can only be varied within a certain range. And if you create an A that goes outside of that range, then people aren't going to be able to interpret it. In fact, the fact that they can't interpret it is what tells you it's outside of that range. And that range may change for different people. Okay, so we're very clear on this thing now. Now what I want to show is character variation. I mean, this is like, this just been going on forever. I mean, for one, so this part here is the actual oracle bone, and then this is like a kind of a rendition of the oracle bone to make it more clear, so it's easier to read. Like you can see, like this one and this one, there's a scratches on the bone and all that make it difficult to read, and so having it drawn out here at the bottom makes stuff easier. But we have, like here, you have 2 X's, and then these are the same 2 X's, but they've now drawn these lines coming down, which is actually, this looks like what people call roof, which is actually not roof, it's actually building, or the early form for building. but it's actually not. We'll find out in a second. It's actually the number six. But anyway, this form, which we pronounce Yao in Mandarin, is actually being used to represent 学习的学, or in Japanese that would be gaku, like daigaku, the gaku. But you'll see there these two X's are actually here. Like the Japanese form and the simplified form don't have those X's, but the traditional form does. So there's actually a historical relationship here. And in these texts, these are just serial numbers for specific pieces of oracle bone, and all of these forms are being used to represent 学习的学. I'm being messaged on the work thing, I think.
Yeah.
Daigaku no gaku.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I say duh?
Yeah, you
Daigaku
said
the gaku.
daigaku dagaku. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm being Chinese centric again.
Yeah. Daigaku.
Daigaku no gaku. Daigaku no gaku. Uh, yeah. So, I presented a paper in China on this topic here of the formation of or why these two can be traded out, because phonologically it doesn't make sense unless you dive deep into it. I'm not going to go into that today, but anyway, so there's at least two levels of variation, and these are all the same character. Well, actually, the three on the one on the left is different. It's actually just Yao. The three on the right are the earliest forms of 学习的学. But so there's variation in the sense of that Yao is being used for 学习的学, and then on the right, these three forms, they're the same character even back then, and they're all different. So there's the variations on at least two levels there. Okay, so these are two early variants also of 学习的学, or daigaku no gaku, daigaku no gaku. And this form on the left is Yao, and then under it is a 6. This form is also Yao on the bottom, and the top are these two hands coming down from the top. And yeah, so here we have a font issue. Interestingly enough, I'll increase the size. Well, you can tell actually. So it when I wasn't zoomed in, it looked like Jiu, which is like a container that you beat stuff in. A pestle, I forget what it's called, but anyway,
mortar.
A mortar. So it looked like Jiu, but this is actually not Jiu. This is I forgot how to say it, and I didn't write it. And well, in Old Chinese anyway, it was either cook or kruk, but it's actually those two hands, right? So a lot of times you'll actually see this where this line is joined at the bottom, which makes it look exactly like Jiu, but it's not Jiu. So looking at the Old Chinese phonology, Daigaku no gaku and 学习的学 were pronounced something. I don't think I can pronounce this. The K here with this backwards question mark with no dot at the bottom, which is a glottal, it's a glottal stop. It means that this K is pronounced like super far back in the mouth. So it's like, oh, like actually like Arabic, I think. That if you think of an Arabic accent, I think they pronounce their K's like that. Instead of K, there's K. But it's like kruk, kruk, something like that. Kruk. And then 6 was pronounced kruk. This dot here means there's like a morph. It means that the K is a prefix here. And then this is the word for the two hands thing coming down, which was pronounced either kruk. I think actually this might even be evidence that. So sorry. So the R being in parentheses means there may be an R here or maybe not. We're not sure. And I'm going by Baxter and Cigar's 2014 reconstruction. But I think actually this here is at least a piece of evidence that there probably was an R, for the fact that these two forms are the same character. And we know that because they're giving the same meaning in context. And actually that's actually, so if it's giving the same meaning with the same pronunciation, i.e. it's representing the same word, like what is a word? A word is a combination of sound and meaning. What is a character? A character is a thing that represents a word visually. If the character is representing the same word, it's considered, and it looks different. It's just a variant. That's the kind of the definition of variant. Or you see the Chinese name here is et, and I think that's the same name they use in Japanese, but the character forms are completely different. And I don't know what the Japanese pronunciation is, but it'd probably be like ikutai or something. But anyway, so here we're talking this, and this is early Jaguan. This isn't like later Jaguan. So we're talking like 3,300 years ago, roughly. If there was variation back then, there's very likely going to be variation for its history, and in fact, that is what we find out. A real quick note about this 学习的学. So this modern form, the traditional modern form, this here is yao over 6, and this form here has the yao in it, and this line that looks like what people call crown, that line is actually I forgot how to say it. Corruption. That line is actually a corruption of 6. So that this 6 in this yao is in the modern form. Now this here is the same yao in the hands, right? Well, the hands are also here. The zi or ko was added later. So these forms from 3,000 years ago are combined and added. They still exist in the modern form. So here's more early script variation. These are taken from Qiu Xigui's book, 文字学概要. So here we have, this is variation. Okay, so yes, this is a point I wanted to make about variance. They vary in distance. So different places will have different variants, and different variants appear over different times. So here we have like one of these early or actually Jinwen forms where you have a very clearly, this thing is depicting an animal, right? Turns out it's a horse, but it's very clearly depicting an animal. And this next thing is very clearly like an outline of this pictorial thing. It's more abstract, and we see over time abstraction increases, right? And basically what happens there is, and I should have had my slide with the Simpsons in it, but if you get on YouTube and look up Tracy, I think it's Tracy Ullman show, that's where the Simpsons got their start. They were just like a couple minute clips on that show. But if you go look at those very early Simpsons and then watch a new one, I mean, the changes are dramatic. And they're the same as the changes here. The early forms of the Simpsons, Homer had way more hair. He was still bald, but it was all drawn in much more detail. The characters all looked more realistic, and over time they get more and more abstract. And it comes from drawing the same thing over and over and over again. You just naturally come up with shortcuts, and then if you maintain the important parts of the form, like for me, that's what I do when I write English. I don't. Probably somebody learning English wouldn't be able to read my handwriting, but I can read my handwriting because I can tell by what it looks like. Like I don't write shun, like Tion. I don't write that. I write T and then a line. But I just know those words, and I can read the rest of the words in my thing. So once again, what am I doing? I'm using meaning to make up for character forms that this case, letter forms I've left out. But so you'll it's very clear that it starts off looking like a real world object, and then over time it becomes an outline. Then it becomes a lot more abstract, even more abstract, and until you get to here where you're at Li Shu, and I mean it doesn't resemble a horse at all. And if you even if you know it's a horse and you're looking at this, it's difficult if you have, especially if you haven't seen these forms before and you're just looking at this, like you just have no idea what this thing actually is, right? And then the same for the fish, right? This thing looks like a fish, and then I mean that actually looks like it could be the bottom of a turtle or something, but it's just a more abstract version of this. And so, what's the advantage to the abstraction? Well, the advantage is it's easier to write. Right? So here, this is the same characters at the same time period, but different geographical locations. These are all country names. So Qin, Chu, Qi, and this is either Yan or Yan. I don't remember which one the country name is, and Sanjin. So this is the same character, and these are different forms because different people in different areas write the characters differently. Now, I'm sure everybody knows the story about Qin Shi Huang um, standardizing character forms. Well, what he really did was told everybody stop writing the way you write and start writing the way we write. We being people of Qin, and then you guys being the other people that got conquered by Qin to unify China. Okay, if you think about it, all those scribes were used to writing one way, and then they were told to write another way. Is that original way going to influence the new way? Of course. How could it not? Right? So they might actually write a form that looks more like the Qin form, but has some characteristic, either extra stroke or strokes, or the bend of a stroke or something like that. So clearly, uh, oh, this must be John. Is this yours, John? Yeah,
That's
this
my
is
submission, yeah.
John's because I don't recognize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So clearly, and the thing is, I'm actually just showing you a very simple thing because you have other stuff that comes into play, like um, cursive, right? If you've looked into Chinese cursive or Japanese cursive, there's a gazillion types of cursives. Cursive is, and cursive directly influences cursive from ancient times and cursive from modern times influences character variations. Um, and then also dialect, right? So pronunciation changes in dialect, so the sound component in a dialect may be different. That's not as much of an issue today, but before, say, 50 years ago, or even in Hong Kong today, it is an issue. Uh, in Hong Kong, you see on signs in public, even on like the bus, like some official signs, you see dialect writing. Like on the when I lived in Hong Kong, which is already 20 years ago, I guess. But when you on the bus, there's a sign above the door saying "Don't stand in the doorway," basically, and the character for "stand" wasn't "Jan," it was well Cantonese "Pei Pei Hai Do," "Mho Pei Hai Li Do," something like that. But anyway, so and then you see advertisements in Hong Kong, which a lot of times have Cantonese writing in them. And then, like, I think John's actually going to give some examples of uh, variations from Hong Kong. But anyway, I actually talked way longer than I planned on, so I'm going to hand this over to John. Holy crap! I'm already 40 minutes into it. I meant to talk for like five. Sorry, but hopefully everybody got something from it. Are you there, John?
Ah, there we go. I'm muted. That's why nobody could hear me. Okay. I should be back on now. Um, so thanks, Ash, for that. Sorry for the little technical glitch there, but yeah, it's interesting stuff. I tried to fill in the blanks for those of you who don't speak Chinese or maybe didn't know who Qin Shi Huang was and things like that in the comments in the chat. And I see a few other comments in the chat that we'll probably address in a little bit, but let me get into my section of the presentation first, and we'll, I think, probably be better to just address all the questions at the end. So let me pull up my slides. Well, this is back when I was showing Ash's examples. Okay, so my section, we're talking about kind of the same thing, but in modern and especially in computing context. So same character, different shape, font standards, and computing with Chinese characteristics. Now I've typed the same word here 3 times. Once the way it is in simplified Chinese and Japanese, except I've used a Japanese font here. Some of you may have spotted that. Here it's in traditional Chinese in the Taiwan standard. Here it's traditional Chinese in the mainland PRC standard. So same word, different ways of writing, and you can probably spot several differences in addition to this vertical versus this slant dot, and of course the obvious simplified character here, but there's even several differences between these two characters too, right? So we're going to look at a few pairs like that. So we'll start with the obvious one. What's the difference here? Well, if you're learning Japanese, you're probably looking at that and you're going, that one on the right is not a kanji, right? But that's actually the PRC simplified version of horse, right? So this one's pretty obvious to see. What's the difference? Well, simplified versus traditional, right? But a lot of times people say things are a simplified and traditional difference when they're not actually. So this is a good example. This is go. Now, which one's right and what's the difference, right? Now, a lot of times you'll see on Reddit or other places online, people ask about this specific pair of characters, and the answer will be, oh, it's a simplified versus traditional difference. Well, no, it's not. They've got the same number of strokes, so there's no simplification here. It's a difference in arrangement. So basically what happened is that once upon a time, both of these things sort of coexisted. Different people would use one over the other or at different time periods or whatever, but they both existed for a long time. And when the PRC and Taiwan decided to standardize their character sets in the 20th century, one of them chose one form, that's Taiwan chose this one, and one of them chose the other form, the PRC chose this one, right? So it's not a simplified versus traditional difference. It's a standardization difference. It's different places have different standards for the same characters. Here's another example. If you're learning Japanese, you probably latched on immediately. What I've noticed that Japanese learners tend to be a little bit more sensitive to looking at these and going, oh, that one's right and these others are wrong. Obviously, some Chinese learners get tripped up by it too, which is why we're doing this stream. But if you're learning Japanese, you probably recognize this one as the standard form in Japan. If you're learning Taiwanese Mandarin, you probably recognize this as the standard form in Taiwan. The giveaway here for most people is going to be that this top component here is written with 4 strokes in Taiwan versus 3 strokes basically everywhere else. But there's other differences too. If you look at the oh, Ash is pointing out to me on the chat about this one. This is, oh, yeah, this is a good point that Ash is making. So it's not a simplified traditional difference, it's a Taiwan PRC difference. So this is the standard in Taiwan. This is the standard in the PRC for both simplified and traditional characters. So that, you know, further shows that it's not a simplified traditional difference. So back to this, this bottom right component also, you can see it's written in 3 different ways, right? This one, the stroke crosses the line. The other 2, it doesn't. This one, the stroke is horizontal. This one, it's slanted, right? Um, so there's, there's even different standards for how many strokes a character can have and the shape of the strokes. So if you're ever using a dictionary that is arranged by stroke count, and especially, you'll get used to eventually which components can have different numbers of strokes in different places. If you don't find it under the number of strokes you're expecting, try one up or one down, one more stroke or one less stroke, and you may be able to find it. And it's because of differences like this regionally. And yeah, again, this is the PRC version, and I think it's also the Hong Kong version. Oh no, the Hong Kong version is this. It's 4 strokes as well. But notice, okay, so this is Hong Kong. It's the same as Taiwan, except that stroke is slanted. So we've now actually seen 4 different versions of this character, right? And again, we've got this sort of thing, guo, right? Now, I haven't even included the PRC simplified character. I've just included traditional, but you see we've got 2 types of variation. One is this zigzag thing here. One is the location of this box. Here it's on the left, here it's on the right, right? This is the Taiwan standard. This is PRC and Hong Kong. This is Japan. Now, sometimes it's really interesting to look at this stuff because, you might expect Hong Kong traditional and Taiwan traditional to line up, but a lot of times they don't. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes Hong Kong aligns with PRC, and sometimes it doesn't. So they all have their own separate standards that don't really depend on the standards of other places, which is why you see some of this. And we're going to talk about how computers handle this too. Another thing, when I said stroke count can vary between standards, stroke order can also vary. Um, Here's another one. And I'll just go through them quickly. This one's obvious. It's the PRC simplified version, right? This is the Taiwan traditional version. But then what are these? Now, in my experience, a Japanese native speaker will see these 2 and immediately say that this one is Chinese. Why is that? Because this dot is slanted here. And in Japanese fonts, it tends to either be a horizontal line or a short vertical. So if you learn some of these differences, you can become really sensitive and know immediately that these are, you know, that something is a Chinese font versus a Japanese font. We're going to revisit this character later on in the presentation because there's another interesting thing about this one, which won't make sense until I explain some stuff about Unicode. So, and then there's more obvious ones like dragon, right? This is the Taiwan form because Taiwan generally, for this meat component, distinguishes it from moon by making these 2 strokes slanted, whereas other standards don't do that. They just make them horizontal so that you can't distinguish between moon and meat. But then we've got the obvious. This is PRC simplified. This is Japanese shinjitai. So shinjitai is Japanese simplified characters, which most Japanese learners will think of as basically the standard characters. So in Japanese, this is the normal modern form, and this is sort of a historical form. You still see it, and people still recognize it, but you're going to see this more often in modern Japanese text. So similarly here, like I said, I just had a camera freak out. I'm going to turn off my Slack, guys. I still get it on my phone, but it won't make the notification noises on the stream here. So And Ash points out a good thing. A lot of these differences derive from calligraphy traditions. So this simplification comes from a shorthand, like a cursive version of this, right? This, I think, also comes from a shorthand, but I'd have to look it up to see exactly how that works. Um, and same over here. These are just different calligraphic traditions. This thing here is an abbreviation of this. If you're interested in that kind of thing, we actually cover simplifications and abbreviation based on cursive script in our Chinese cursive crash course. So I recommend checking that out. So again, this is Taiwan, this is Japan, and I think Hong Kong. This is PRC with the box on the other side, right? Now Taiwan you can recognize immediately because of that, again, that meat component. This one's a tiny difference, but like I pointed out earlier, Japanese fonts will often make this dot vertical, like a short vertical stroke like this, and Chinese fonts will generally make it a slanted stroke like this. So it's little cues like that. And then we've got here Taiwan, everywhere else. So yeah, little cues like this can let you know what you're looking at. And then this is a little more difficult to see. So we've got, this is the Taiwan standard character. This is the Japanese standard. And a dead giveaway for that is the way this bottom part of this component is written. This is standard in Japanese. This is more common in Chinese fonts. You will see this version in Chinese fonts sometimes, and we'll cover why in a minute. But basically, it's that font makers can do whatever they want. But for standards, the three dots in Chinese-speaking places is the standard. This is the standard traditional character version in Hong Kong, and that's also where the PRC simplified version comes from. So slightly, quite a different character form actually, even though they're both traditional characters. So okay, where does all this come from? Well, before we get into all that, there's a few concepts that I want to just kind of explain. So like we talked about earlier, Ash pointed out all these different A's, right? But they all point to the same underlying unit, right? So an abstract written unit, the letter A, right? So that's what a character is. So when we talk about a character, unless we're talking about specific things about the form of the character, we're talking about an abstract unit, right? A glyph is one visual realization of that character. It's the shape of the character on the page or on the screen. So it's what you see in any one representation of a character. And of course, as we've seen, there's a ton of variation that you can find on the glyph level. So character, this abstract thing, is kind of deep structure, whereas glyph is surface structure. You've got the thing itself, the abstract notion of the thing, versus the way it's actually realized on the page or on the screen. A font is a designed system of glyphs. Okay, so we'll look at a few common fonts in a moment. But like on your computer, when you see like Songti or Kaiti or things like that, or in Japanese like Mincho, Gothic, and a few others, like those are fonts. Now what's interesting is there's also font families. So when I've been showing these, I'm using Noto Sans. It's a Google font. It's free. But there's multiple versions of the font within the family. So these are all the same font family, Noto Sans, but each of them follows different standards for writing. So I've got Noto Sans TC, which is the Taiwan traditional. JP is the Japanese standard. SC is simplified, so that's the PRC simplified standard. And then this is Hong Kong, HK. So if you're ever interested in looking at different writing standards, Noto Sans is a great font to see the differences between regions. And then you've got Ziti in Chinese or jitai in Japanese. It's a broader category. Another point to make is that this is a different Unicode point, not just a font difference. Um, we'll cover Unicode points in a moment, but um, let me find my spot. Okay, so when the Chinese term 字体 um, is used to mean all different kinds of things. It's used to mean a character form, a glyph, a font, like an actual font file, a way of handwriting, all of that. And that's why when you see native speakers online and they say, oh, it's just a font difference, but they're talking about two different people's handwriting, you know, don't be confused. Just think, okay, when they say font, they're what they mean is 字体, which is a much broader category than any of these in English. Um, so I've got some keywords down here that you can maybe attach to these different things to help you keep them straight. So the mental model you want to have about how Chinese characters or kanji work on computers is computers store characters as code points. Okay, and we'll look at what that means in a moment. The fonts, the font files are actually what create the glyphs on your screen. So that representation of the character that you can actually see. So different countries or regions, if you prefer, have their government standards that define which forms are preferred. But in real life, people don't actually follow those standards all the time. They probably learn the standard in school, but then they develop their own habits later on. So, and then, as I said earlier, font makers do what they want. They're generally, font makers are under no obligation to follow government standards unless they're specifically designing a government standard font. Um, or like in the case of Noto Sans, they're purposefully following the different standards. Um, but font makers often keep the standards in mind, but they have other considerations too. They have aesthetic considerations. So sometimes they'll deviate from the standard um, just for aesthetic reasons. There is a Taiwanese Ministry of Education font called Biao Kai Ti. So if you need a Taiwan standard font, Biao Kai Ti is a good one. There's probably ones for PRC and Hong Kong as well. And there's one for Japanese called Yu Kyokasho. So Kyokasho is a jiaokeshu. It's a textbook font, but it follows the Japanese standard very closely. So and this is why we're doing this live stream, is because not being aware of these different aspects of the issue is what leads to a lot of these, confusion, a lot of this confusion that people have. So we've got typeface. So typeface is the same as a font file, right? So you've got the same code point or character, different design for the character. So here's a good example. Now you'll see this in Chinese. You'll often see this in print, even though this is defined as the handwriting standard. It's the same underlying character. Now in Japanese, I believe this is standard for both print and handwriting. So a Japanese person would possibly recognize this character and know what it is, but they would immediately know it's Chinese. It's a Chinese font, not Japanese. We've got regional differences, as we've looked at. We've got simplified and traditional. And then we've got Chinese and Japanese forms. Now, some of these are handled at the font level, and some are handled by different code points. So Japanese simplified characters, or shinjitai, often have their own code points, but not always. So these things I'm covering are basically good guidelines to keep in mind, but the rules are not universal. There's definitely edge cases. There's weird things that happen sometimes. We'll look at a few of those in a minute. So typeface different. So the three big types of like categories of fonts for Chinese characters, you can call them serif or Ming or Song, or in Japanese it's called Mincho. That's a serif font. It's like a Times New Roman sort of thing. It's used for book printing primarily. Then you've got this without the serif, so sans serif, Heiti in Chinese, or Gothic, Goshiku in Japanese. These are often used for, like, in print, they're used for things like headlines or titles or signs, anything that's like displayed and not printed on a page like a newspaper. You'll see this sort of thing. It's also much more common on computers than this sort of font because it's very clear and easy to read on screens. And then you have kaiti, which I don't think is very common in Japanese, but in Chinese it's reasonably common, and it's meant to look like brush writing. Um, so as you can see, there's little differences between each one. There's things like, well, I can give a good example. I've seen people when they first start learning Chinese or Japanese, and they learn this form, and they actually write it with a little triangle at the end of the stroke here. That's a book printing thing only. It's not something you ever want to copy in your handwriting. Um, so little things like that you want to be aware of and make sure that you don't let them trip you up. Um, there's also a fang song, which I don't think is very common in Japanese, but it's basically a blend of these two styles. So it's stroke shapes from song fonts and angles. You see how the horizontal strokes aren't really horizontal; they kind of go up. So that sort of stroke shape or angle from Kai fonts. Those combine to make Feng Song fonts. Um, so again, we've sort of covered regional glyph difference. There's so much variation. I mean, you can see these two have the zigzag. This is Taiwan and Hong Kong. This one doesn't have the zigzag, and neither do these. But there's other differences. The box is in a different spot, right? That's a PRC thing. If you see the box on the left-hand side, it's pretty much always going to be a PRC standard thing. You can see all the other standards have the box on the right. And then you've got Korea, which adds an extra dot. Okay, and you'll see two dots on this component in a lot of fonts as well that aren't Korean. Like in traditional Chinese, you'll definitely see two dots on this character form, sometimes in print. Um, so again, these are things to not let trip you up. It's just the type of variation you're going to encounter if you're reading Chinese. A few other things, these are all simplified versus traditional differences, but it's not a simple switch between the two. These all have different code points. Oh, and look at this. I've done a Japanese form there when it should be Chinese. There we go. And why is it so small? Okay. That's another thing, guys. I know a lot of Chinese learners see this on their screen and they wonder why it's that way. It's because you're using a Japanese font. So if you see that and you want it to look more like the Chinese version that you need to switch your font to a Chinese font. Now, the standard form in Japanese is this. The other one that we just saw with the vertical line, that's a pretty common shorthand that you'll see occasionally in Japan. So it's not just a simple switch. So if you're switching from traditional to simplified, it's not just a matter of swapping out some code points or changing the font, because you do have many to one conversions. So both of these traditional characters get simplified to this simplified character in the PRC. So if you're going from simplified to traditional, you need context to know which of these two characters is indicated. Now, computers have gotten much better at this than they used to be. So they'll generally handle it pretty well, but you still have to check manually. And like I said earlier, Japanese simplification, it's got its own thing. It's got its own code points. These are generally not handled at the font level. They're handled at the code point level. Now, two exceptions are these two, which are the same as the PRC simplified, and they use the same code points. But since generally the Japanese forms are meaningfully different from the PRC simplified forms, they tend to use different code points as well. Even this, which looks pretty close, you can see these are just vertical strokes here, whereas in Japanese they actually are not. And then the bottom component is different as well. Okay, so I said we were going to revisit this one. This is an interesting edge case, and it's good to be aware that things like this exist. And the way I found out that this was an issue was I was looking for this in Dr. Baxter's old Chinese reconstruction document, and I did a simple text search and couldn't find it. And I just thought he has to have this in his reconstruction somewhere, right? I mean, um, and it turns out he's using the PRC traditional standard code point. So it's a different code point, as you can see. These are Unicode code points here. Um, so if you're using his reconstruction document and you want to find something that has this right-hand side component, you need to use the version, the PRC traditional version, that has the correct code point. Because a simple text search, if you look for this, it's not going to show you this. Now, a more robust search engine will associate these two together, and you'll be able to find it, but that's not always the case. Um, so, okay, another thing I think everyone has probably encountered at some point is this sort of thing, where you have all your sentence in one font and just a few characters in a different font. Now, this is a sentence in Cantonese. It's "Ngo tongo goko da mong kao holeka." So my brother and I are good tennis players, and if you've used Glossika's courses, you'll know that this is a Glossika sentence from early in their old courses. Um, so what I've done is these characters that are either, this is a traditional character form, and these are both Cantonese dialectal characters. We're pretending that this other font doesn't cover those characters. It actually does, but for purposes of demonstration, we're pretending it doesn't. So whenever you see a sentence like this where you've got a few characters in an obviously different font, what that means is your font doesn't have support for those code points. We'll look at what code points are in just a moment. I've got a few slides on Unicode. But what it means is you need to find a font that does cover those, or sometimes you can get away with finding maybe not the same font as the rest of the sentence, but one that looks visually close enough, and just use that for a couple of characters. But you see this sort of thing all the time. This is a picture that Ash took in Thailand, where you can see there's obviously a different font being used for the simplified Chinese characters versus the ones that exist in traditional or maybe in Japanese. You see this all the time in Japan too. For signs in Chinese for tourists, you'll see a mix of fonts like this, and they're using a Japanese font with a PRC fallback font for glyphs that don't exist in that font. So another thing, probably a lot of people, definitely if you've been learning Chinese for some amount of time, you've probably seen this sort of text on your computer. Now this is an encoding issue, and so we're going to get into the Unicode thing now. We're going to talk about code points. So there are a bunch of different ways to encode Chinese characters on computers. And what encoding means is, I'm going to add an example up here. On the back end, what your computer sees is something like U plus 1, 2, 3, 4, some hexadecimal series of numbers. It could be like this, right? And seeing this tells your computer to interpret this as a Unicode thing. So what it does is it'll go and look up what that code point is in Unicode, and I don't know what it is, obviously, but let's pretend that's an A. So what the computer sees is this, but what it shows you on the screen is A, right? It's the same for Chinese characters. You'll have something like this, and it'll tell you, it tells the computer that we should be looking at shuo, right? So that's what you'll see on your end. The issue is there's more than just Unicode. There's all these different encoding standards, and these are just ones that encode Chinese characters. There's other encoding standards for other writing systems as well, And there's probably more than just this for Chinese character languages. And that, that's CJKV, that's Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese. Um, there's probably more than this. Um, and each of these have their own codes. So like that U plus thing that I just showed, each of these systems has their own way of encoding characters on the back end. So what happens if your system is expecting, say, big 5, and what you're seeing is Guopiao 2312, you might see something like this. It's called Luanma, or Mojibake in Japanese, which just means changed characters. So yeah, if you run into this, it's an encoding issue. And if you're in a browser, a lot of times there is an option for you to switch encodings. Um, the nice thing about modern computing is that you're not going to run into this nearly as much as you used to. Because what happened was the Unicode consortium looked at all this and went, we've got a million different standards. Let's make one standard that covers everything. So that's what Unicode is. One system that covers all, as many different writing systems as possible that we can use as one universal standard. Now, of course, there's an XKCD comic that's relevant here. How standards proliferate for AC chargers, for character encodings, instant messaging, etc. Situation is that there's 14, or in our case, probably quite a lot more, competing standards. And someone goes, oh, we need to develop one universal standard that covers everyone's use cases. And now soon there are 15 competing standards, right? So just because Unicode exists doesn't mean that all these went away. I know for sure Shift.jis is still really common in Japan, and so is this. And this one may be too, I'm not sure. So you still run into it sometimes, although most of the internet has switched over to Unicode. So how is Unicode arranged? So there's different blocks. You'll hear about code blocks in Unicode. You've got your main unified ideographs. I mentioned earlier, they still use the term ideographs. It's a bad term, but whatever. This covers almost 21,000 characters. So there's nearly 21,000 code points in this block. This covers the vast majority of what you'll ever see on the internet. A lot of people will probably almost never see anything outside this set. So pretty much any modern font is going to cover all of these. But then you have things like rare characters and variants and characters that were only used historically, characters meant to transcribe ancient character forms into modern shapes, all kinds of stuff. So that's what all of these extension blocks are for. And you can see there's a ton of them. So if you ever see a sentence that looks like this, right? So we saw earlier that this means that this character is not supported by your font that you're using. And so it has fallen back to a different font. If you ever see this, or sometimes it has a question mark in the middle or something like that, what that means is that you don't have a font on your computer that can render that character. So it's just it knows it's supposed to be a Unicode code point, but it doesn't have a font that it can use to show you the characters, so it just gives you a box. If you run into that problem, there's some fonts that I've recommended historically that cover all of blocks A and B, which is quite a lot. But I found out recently there's a few fonts, and these are just two, there are others too, but that have full coverage or close to full coverage. So this one, and I put links here, I'll put them in the chat as well. So this one covers the main block and all the way up through extension J. So it has a ton of coverage. This one covers just B through J, so it doesn't have the earlier ones. And there's several others too. So if you do stuff with classical Chinese or historical documents, paleography, or if you're just interested in character components, because if you're reading stuff about character composition, you're gonna come in contact with some of these extension blocks, characters from the extension blocks. I recommend installing one of these fonts. Um, yeah, so the idea with Unicode was that you should have, if there's one underlying abstract character, like we talked about earlier, um, it should have one code point and multiple glyphs that are acceptable, that are basically chosen by the font and by your system's language settings. So that's the ideal. And the idea is to streamline and standardize, to make conversion easy and things like that. And it is mostly consistent, but it's not always intuitive. Like I showed earlier, we have things like this that you would think these two variants would just be handled by the same code point, and let the font render the difference in these two strokes on the top. But in reality, they're actually two different code points. So um, yeah. So these are all things to just be aware of. I'm going to pull that one slide up again. Your mental model. Computers store characters as code points. The font draws the glyph on your screen. National standards define preferred forms for writing, but in reality, people do what they're going to do based on their own habits. And font makers are under no obligation to follow these standards. So you're going to see a lot of variation in fonts. The thing to do, I'm going to skip over some of these slides. Eventually, if you do enough looking and paying attention to fonts and things like that, you'll kind of stop noticing the differences unless you're really looking for them. It's kind of like, the scene from Matrix where, in this case, you just get used to it. I don't even see the differences. I just see shuo, ma, gao, right? A lot of times you won't even notice. Like I look at kanji forms and I don't even realize that they're different from the Chinese forms unless I think about it. So um, over time, as long as you're tolerant of variance, you'll get used to it and it won't trip you up nearly as much. So the important points: your device may show wrong looking glyphs. Chinese text in a Japanese font can look odd. Same thing for Japanese text in a Chinese font. So if you're running into that sort of thing, check the font that you're using. Now, for learning characters, you should learn the standard for whichever community you're interested in. So if you're learning Hong Kong Cantonese, learn Hong Kong traditional characters. If you're learning Taiwanese Mandarin, learn Taiwanese traditional characters. If you're focused on PRC Mandarin, PRC simplified characters, right? And if you're learning Japanese, of course, learn the standard Japanese forms. Also, just a recommendation, don't just randomly copy computer fonts for handwriting, like I showed earlier with people adding triangles to characters where they don't belong. At the very least, if you're going to copy a computer font, you should copy one that's meant to look like handwriting. So that could be Kaiti fonts or the Kyokasho fonts for Japanese, the textbook fonts. Those are good handwriting models, or decent handwriting models at least. So I have a slide here. I'm going to post the slides, a link to download these later on. But yeah, I just have those different regions laid out. But this is a guiding principle. Learn the standard of your target community, but definitely be comfortable with variation. I should amend my statement about copying fonts. It's best not to copy a font, even a handwriting-based font. It's best really to copy good handwriting. But if you don't have that available for some reason, the least you can do is copy a Kaiti type of font. All right, guys, that is my section of the. Oh, my camera died. Well, you get me on my laptop camera, guys. Sorry about that. That's my section. I'm going to turn it over to Christine. Christine, are you ready? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, cool. I'm going to turn it over to Christine, and then we'll do Q&As at the end, guys.
Hello, hey everyone, nice to see you here. So I'm gonna just share my screen and let you know what I'm gonna talk about today. Just right here. Okay, so we were looking at a lot of different fonts, right? Now, when it comes to real life situation, what will you see? So these are the street signs, shop signs you will see on the street. And you can see different fonts here. So it's very different from especially these ones. They're very different from the ones you see on the computer or in books, right? So that's why
Your
I had the idea
slides up.
that I
Hang on.
want to.
I need to put your slides up. Hang on.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Okay, you're good.
All right. So in this picture, you see these are the street signs and shop signs from PRC. And they have all different kinds of fonts. So you see in the middle one here, they have at least 2 different types of fonts here. So they're very different from what you see in the computer, or the computer fonts you have, or the fonts you see in books. And that's why we need to be familiar with the variation, just like John mentioned, right? And now here we see more fonts. Like, do you remember these types? Like Ash just mentioned. Remember this one? It's a fish, right? So we will use different kinds of fonts and even different character forms to represent as shop signs. And if you can tell the difference, then you know the interesting part of it. These are still the PRC signs, and now I'm going to show you the Japanese signs. These are the Japanese street signs, and they have characters in different fonts. So there are so many different ones. I will have to say the Japanese kanji signs, they're very artistic. Sometimes, even for native Chinese speaker, I couldn't recognize characters. I'm not familiar with them. For example, like these ones. Can you tell what are they saying? Apart from the kanas, can you tell the kanji? And here, like we have the ma, like Ash mentioned in the beginning of the talk, right? So there are so many different ones. Now I'm going to show you this one. So do you know where is this from? The street signs. I don't think I can see your comments right now, but you can comment in the comment box. This is from Hong Kong. So this is from Hong Kong. So you can tell the difference that from Hong Kong and from China, the biggest difference is that they have a lot of calligraphy style of shop signs, because in the old days, they prefer using the calligraphy style. And this one is from Taiwan. So in Taiwan, the special part of about Taiwan's shop signs and for different kinds of phones is that you see there are so many variations, like these ones or these ones. The round shape one is from the older style, and these are kind of standard. So you can tell, and this is the kaiti we just mentioned, right? So these are all different kinds of fonts you will encounter when you go to a Chinese speaking country or the place use kanji. Now, these are the handwriting form. And we know that some of them are kind of like cursive. So if you can read Chinese or if you learned kanji before, try to recognize the handwriting here and here. See if you can recognize the words, the characters. And this one is the formal standard writing form. So that when you write very clearly, people can understand what you're writing about. Okay, so for me, these two, I don't recognize all of them. I cannot. Some of them are still a little bit hard for me to understand. Like this one. I don't know what that means, this character. Yeah. Yep. And well, this is Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, right? And from the Computex presentation, he posted two different displays and the university. So they all have different fonts. The university, because it has a very long history for the university, so the university sign is using the calligraphy form from a very famous calligrapher. And this restaurant, this type of font is actually called the Wawa Ti, the baby doll font. It's not using as popular right now, but you still see that on street signs. So these are the ones that you will encounter on street, and it's different from what we learned from books or from what we're familiar with. And one last thing I want to share is that, for example, for this bubble tea shop, the tea drink shop, at first I couldn't understand the character for the last one. I thought it was mu, as mu qing, mother, as haha. That one. I thought that was the character for mother. But then after I read in English, I was like, oh no, actually that's dan. That's a different one. And the reason why I wanted to suggest that we have a font discussion is because of this Taiwan Power Company, because the calligraphy font for calligraphy one for the company logo has been used for so many decades, and it was a calligraphy copy from Yu Youren, a very famous calligrapher. But now, I think just only last month, they changed that into the modern font created by Adobe Illustrator from a young designer. So the font difference actually caused a really big argument in the local community, because people are talking about, oh, we should use the calligraphy one to preserve the traditional, or other people suggest that, oh, we should change because this is actually more suitable for what we're having now. So these are the fonts that we encounter every day. And when you go back, because we will provide you the slides, and you can have a look at different fonts and try to see, these are the real life signs and fonts you will see on the street. It's very different. And also I wanted to point it out, another thing is that, for example, you see the fonts here, right? We know a lot of people like kanji tattoo or Chinese characters tattoo, but oftentimes people would use the font they have in their computer, which is usually this font. And maybe next time, if you're considering having one, you can have more different, like a more beautiful font, I would suggest. All right, so these are the fonts I want to share with you, and I'm gonna close my slides.
Actually, can you keep them up for a sec?
Sure.
Because we have a couple questions about some of them, and I have some questions myself too. Can you go back to for one, the handwriting page? I wanted to point out, because you mentioned that this bottom right one, the big one, is standard. But I just wanted to point out, in case people really look at this, there's a few character forms there that are not really standard. They're more calligraphic. So like bottom right, chu, right? That's that's more of a calligraphic form and not really a standard way of writing it. And the same with
换
huan, and also ho. So in
which
the fourth column, the second one down,
is oh this one. Yeah.
home the ho, right? So even there, it's quite clear handwriting, but there's still some variation there, and that's really, it's very nice handwriting, but it's kind of more historical calligraphic forms in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Can you go up to the Taiwan? Oh yeah. So somebody asked, um, is that Edomoji on the bottom in Taiwan? Edomoji is that Japanese font. Can you zoom in on that? That
Which
Hongdou Shitang, bottom right.
oh okay, 1 minute. 红豆 oh that one.
Right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, Edomoji is that's a Japanese uh, font. It's super common in Japan. You'll see it on a lot of restaurants and things like that. In Taiwan, they use it on, well, basically on Japanese restaurants and things to give a Japanese flair to it. So um, there was another interesting one in this image. Can you zoom out? What was it? Oh, just some of these kind of like more graphic design type fonts, like the bottom underneath
The
that.
bus?
Hmm?
Yeah, the bus. Right?
The bus.
Oops. Here.
Oh, no, actually, I was thinking to the bottom left of that 完美发型.
完美. Oh, this one. Yeah.
Yeah, the very bottom in the center. Oh, yeah. So you're looking at the one that says 250 in the middle. I mean, below that, it's
Oh,
black
that one.
with white text. Yeah, yeah, that one. Yeah, so that kind of thing kind
Yeah,
of fits in
these
practice.
are all linked.
Yeah, right, right. And then you've got a sort of wawati up on the top left there. Top left, other way.
Oh, 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 yeah.
That vertical.
Kind of like this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah. So that type of style you'll see a lot in Hong Kong, or although you said it's not as popular as it used to be, I used to see it like in people's handwriting. Young women especially would write like that, and like I would see it in manga and things like that, um, and just all over the place. I remember like that being a super common font style when I was in Taiwan, although that's been
It
quite.
was. It was. But now they don't write as much.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Trends change, I guess. Let's see. There's
Mm.
some other interesting questions, I think. Let's see. Oh, if one were to come across that specific font rendering, the Edomoji, how does one know if they're either reading pure kanji or if it is Chinese? Coming across a Japanese restaurant in China. So, in my experience, they'll tend to use Chinese character forms, but with a Japanese style of font. So, like where there's a difference between the two standards, you'll see the local style of character, but just rendered in a Japanese style of writing. Um, it's really
It
interesting.
really depends. If it's like street signs like this one, this is a Japanese restaurant in China. But the way they write it, it's in
It's very
kanji.
Japanese. Yeah, that calligraphy style is super Japanese. Um,
Mm.
this sort of like variation between super thick strokes and very thin ones, and a very blocky and kind of inconsistently sized style as very much a Japanese type of aesthetic. Um, so yeah, I mean, you can't necessarily know 100% if you're just shown a random photo of something. You can't really necessarily know if it's China or Taiwan. Although this slide totally gives me, or sorry, I said China or Taiwan. You can't know if it's Chinese or Japanese necessarily, but there are some general trends. Like this whole slide gives me Japan vibes, even if some of them are in China. Um, Part of it's the design aesthetic of the signs is a little different from what you'll find in Chinese speaking places. Part of it is the fonts themselves. Yeah, it just kind of depends, but you can develop a feel for it. Um, Trying to think, there was something else I wanted to. Um, oh yeah, yeah.
Japanese?
So no, it wasn't this one. It was actually the other one that you were just showing a moment ago with the oh yeah with the 小篆. So the seal script on that center image. Something I've noticed is a trend. So do you know where this one is from, Christine?
This one is from China.
It's from China. Okay, cool. I've noticed in Taiwan, a lot of places that have seal script signs will alter the seal script form to make it more readable to modern people. So if you zoom in, can you zoom in on that? That chuo component. Can you kind of highlight that part? Yeah, so that bit. A lot of times you'll see that rendered in a more modern style because a lot of modern people won't recognize it. I saw a lot of signs like that in Taiwan. I see basically no signs like that in Japan. So that doesn't seem to be a thing that Japanese people do. They'll type the real seal script form whether people are able to read it or not. So there's different, preferences for readability and things like that. Um, Definitely some places, most commonly cafes, use seal script style, though I believe it's more commonly used in logos. Yeah, I mean it's reasonably common both in Taiwan and in Japan. Um, Now whether people can read it or not is a different story. Um, let's see. Okay, I think we can take the slides off and let's do some Q&A. Let me add you, Christine. Ash, are you ready for me to add you on? Is Ash here? Ash, I think your camera is frozen, if you can hear me. Um, Let me know when you're ready for me to bring you back on. In the meantime, we'll answer some questions. Um, oh, he says he can hear me. He's ready. All right, let's see if we can get this to work. Yeah, Ash, your camera's frozen. Can you say something so we can see if we can at least hear you?
Hey, Ash.
Can't hear you. All right, well, we'll do Q&A, just me and Christine, or you can try to leave the stream and then rejoin if you want. Um, let's see. All right, there we go. Let's see. Sound issues early on. Okay, imagine being triggered by a Chinese character. It happens though. I think it tends to happen more often with new learners because you're taught when you first start learning, you're taught that this is the one true way of writing that character, and eventually you're gonna encounter other ways of writing, um, and that affects some people more strongly than than it affects other people. Um, I think early on, when I first encountered that kind of variation, somebody put it to me like, well, think about different ways of writing G. and how the lowercase g is different in different fonts. Okay, I think we have Ash here now. There we go. So yeah, I mean that it tends to freak early learners out more than later. You know, if you've been learning for a while, it's less likely to freak you out because you've probably encountered it. But it's still good to know like where some of these variations come from, what could cause it, and what could cause the types of like computer display issues and things like that, so you can kind of know where to start troubleshooting. Um, Now, if you're, like I said earlier, if you're dealing with Unicode issues on a regular basis as a programmer, uh, I think all I can say is good luck because it's a mess. Ash, you've had to deal with some of that, right?
Yeah, actually, I spent when we were doing the dictionary, uh, Python 2 didn't handle it handled normal Unicode, but these extensions have a different amount of bytes that represent the character, and most software doesn't back then didn't handle that stuff. It would create wanma, which by the way the Chinese word literally means chaotic code point or chaotic code or something.
Hmm.
Because you said the Japanese name or the Japanese
Okay, yeah.
meaning of
Mojibake
the Japanese.
is like, it's 文字化 Mojibake.
Which hua? Oh, 变化的
Yeah,
hua.
变化的话. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I spent a week or two writing code to fix the extension character stuff
Yeah.
because it's the normal ones I think 4 bytes, and then the extension characters are 5 bytes.
Yep.
So what happened was if you sent that through code that doesn't handle the 5 bytes, it just treats those first 4 of the 5 as something which is not going to be the thing it's supposed to be clearly, and then that next byte will screw up the thing coming after it because it's gonna read that first byte and then the first 3 bytes of the next thing, so it's cutting that next character up. So yeah,
It was a mess. So it was Python 2, right, that didn't handle it well, and you had to write code
Python
specifically
3
for it?
does
Python
pretty
3
well.
handles it pretty well, yeah. Yeah, multiple versions of Chinese characters. I'm getting triggered. Yeah. Oh yeah, somebody pointed out the word you were looking for earlier was pharyngealized consonant.
I wouldn't trying to say that that is what they are, but I figured that'd be like nobody would get what I'm saying because I mean, even like before I did old Chinese stuff, I didn't know that word. I just know it from reading Baxter's books.
Yeah.
Uh, but that is the correct word. Call.
We have this one. When I was showing the Taiwan standard forms that I said they differentiate meat versus moon, it's actually, yeah, it is rou versus yue, or if you're learning Japanese, niku versus getsu, or tsuki if you prefer. Um, and yeah, the two forms have always looked similar ever since Oracle Bone script. And so most modern ways of writing just collapse them onto the same form. But the Taiwan standard does differentiate, which I think is nice. But you immediately know something is a Taiwanese font when you see that type of distinction. We had a. You want to tell the story about? Probably shouldn't say the
I thought
name, but
yeah, we had a guy working for us, and this, so he had learned Simplified or definitely not the Taiwan standard. And he goes, we were in the office working one day. It's like, man, what's up with Chinese people and like connecting? Like, it's like they have this weird connection between body parts and the moon. And I think I'd actually explained it to him before. We were talking about some character forms. So I just kind of looked at him and he goes,
you had literally
"Oh,
just finished explaining it to him, and so
oh,
it
I
was like
did. Yeah,
it was
okay."
like it totally hadn't computed, and he went, "Yeah, they've got some weird connection." It's like I literally just told you that. He thought it was some like philosophical connection between the body and the moon when it's actually just weird character form
It's
evolution. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually an analogy like that I mentioned earlier. It's via the process of analogy. The form for moon and the form, even in the Taiwan standard, they're similar, right? The difference is you just angle those two horizontal strokes a little bit, but that's what caused them to merge.
Yeah.
Those two forms.
Maybe you'll know this, Ash, because I think I saw you typing on Slack about this when this person asked the question. But do we know the reasons behind why they made the choices they did regarding their choice of which go to use?
I seriously doubt that we do, but I mean, if you're familiar with all the possibilities and like where these things come from, it's almost assuredly that was just the most common form where they lived.
Right.
Uh, it's very unlikely that wasn't the common form where they lived, and then they just, for some abstract reason, chose it. Like, it's
Right.
probably not the case.
We have somebody that commented something about this version that feels more pleasing. Perhaps I've just never seen a character that starts with ju, but they do exist. Few examples there. I think you listed a bunch of examples in Slack, right?
Yeah,
Can you do you still have that open? Can you copy and paste it into the chat?
I have no access to the chat that I can tell.
Okay, I'll grab it.
So I can
Wait,
share the reason why they chose the other go into the other from the difference. So the characters of go in Taiwan and the characters of go in China, they are both variant forms from the same character since ancient times, and the Kanji dictionary includes both. And this is not a matter of simplification, but rather a matter of character standard selection. The standard in mainland China prioritized the use of the more common form, just like Ash mentioned. And while the standard in Hong Kong and Taiwan respect the etymology of the characters, hence the difference between the two.
right. Well, so actually, another interesting thing about that is change in general is handled in Taiwan via historical means. Like, they go back and look in history and see what the correct fingers in the screen there. Uh, could you tell John that I was
Good.
doing
Yeah.
that?
Ash has a certain intonation when he's doing air quotes that you don't even have to see the air quotes, you know he's doing it. When I was
But
learning characters.
yeah. So in China, they go by usually by the most common way, like the what most people are doing, right? And they just kind of make that the standard. And both are valid. I think probably the most common way is the way I would do it, just because it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, in the English standards, you'll hear somebody say, "Well, that's not standard." It's like that's how most people say it.
Yeah.
Like, I never hear this quote unquote correct thing you're talking about. I mean, I know it exists, but it's almost nobody says it, so it's kind of ridiculous to, if 80% of people are saying it one way, and then you make the standard the way 20% of the people are saying it. It just because it's correct, right? When language is like, I used to be very pedantic and prescriptivist about grammar until I learned about language change over time. And like, if you study historical linguistics for 5 minutes, you'll realize, like, the analogy, like, everybody knows I love analogies. My analogy of linguistic change, it's like taking a handful of rubber balls in a room where the walls and the floor are very prone to letting the balls bounce, and you throw those balls down as hard as you can. And you have a camera that takes 1 million pictures a minute, or no, a second, 1 million pictures a second. You throw those balls around, let them bounce around for 5 minutes, and take however many million, or I guess that'd be 300 million pictures. And then you randomly select a picture in the middle of that stack somewhere. And then you say, this right here, this is the correct position of the balls. Like, it's so absolutely, completely random.
Yep.
And like, a lot of these pedantic rules in English are actually didn't even exist before 150 years ago. And they were invented by people that don't know anything about language. So I'll give a quick example, and then we'll get back to Chinese. But a quick example is, you're not allowed to, if you're saying infinitive of a verb, to go, you're not allowed to stick a word in the middle of that. Like you can't say to randomly go. Why not? Because Latin verbs don't have a to in front. They're just a single verb form, and you can't stick something in the middle of that. Ergo, you shouldn't stick anything in between to and go in an English sentence. Clearly, there's some weird idea that Latin is somehow superior to English.
Right. Are you guys still here? Oh, there it went. Okay. I'll tell Ash to rejoin. There he is. Yo. I think my internet connection screwed up.
Think what screwed up?
My internet connection.
Oh.
Everything froze on my end, and I think Christine is still frozen. So hopefully you guys can still hear us at home, whoever's watching. The last thing I heard you say, Ash, and I think Christine has to leave anyway, sure. The office she rented to do this is about to kick her out. So the last thing we heard you say was that there's a weird idea that Latin is superior to English.
Yeah, so it's based on a flawed premise to begin with, and I think to pretty much all English speakers, like if he were to randomly go, or if he were to randomly go, that doesn't sound weird.
Yeah.
But if I say he go over there, that sounds really weird.
Right.
Like that does not fit what English speakers normally say. But if he were to randomly go, I would never notice that as being an odd thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I got a whole bunch of. I could give a whole deep dive talk on English grammar, but anyway, I guess let's do Chinese, given that's what we're supposed to be doing here.
Christine, I saw that you need to get going pretty soon. Is that right? You're muted.
I can stay here if you have any other questions.
Okay. Well, I was thinking because your rental thing ends in 5 minutes, right? So Ash and I can just continue the Q&A, and you can go ahead and, unless you got something else you want to say before you head out.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, cool.
I'll leave it to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for your help today. This was great. See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, I like the Star Trek.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's funny. I was actually thinking that, to boldly go. Yeah, I mean, well, you said I don't think any English speakers will find it weird. I think a lot of people would go, "That's not correct. You can't do that." The grammar nerds, you know.
Totally,
but you.
One thing about people
that thing in English.
One thing about people doing that though, and the thing is, I used to be that person, so I've actually seen this from both ends of that spectrum, is that when people will stop another native English speaker and correct their grammar, it's like, it's never because they didn't understand what the person was saying.
Yeah.
It's because they have some abstract rule in mind. Now, I will granted, like if you say something like, we've been there, right?
I seen it.
That's the one actually I was trying to find. I just couldn't find it. I seen it. I used to say that as a kid, actually.
Sure. I probably did too, yeah.
For standard American English, that is incorrect grammar. Right. And if you talk that way, it's fine if you're talking to your friends, but in a job interview, you probably shouldn't do that.
Right.
But that's different. There actually is a rule that you need a helping verb before you have that form of seen. Seen is what is that? The perfective past tense or something?
Something like that, yeah.
I think it's perfective. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's perfective past tense. You need a helping verb in front of that, and the person's not saying a helping verb, right? So that's like a clear grammar issue. And like I said, if you're talking to your friends, it's fine. I'm not here to go policing how people talk to their friends. But in a formal situation, we all change our language in formal situation. Even if you say, even the guy that says "I've seen it" would say "sir," in a formal situation, they wouldn't say that, right? So there are that people do. That's just a common thing, and it's a good thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
We're all from different parts. We speak differently to our friends, so like having a standard's good.
Especially you,
But at
Ted.
the same time, like, huh?
I said especially you.
Well, but making up these just random rules, like, oh, you can't end a sentence in a preposition, dude. English is a Germanic language. All Germanic languages have phrasal verbs. All Germanic languages end sentences in prepositions. All of them. Swedish does it, Danish does it, Dutch does it, German does it, Frisian does it. They all do it. English fits in that group, so it would be weird if we didn't do it.
Yep.
But the reason you're not allowed to do that is because you're calling that word a preposition, which starts with pre, which means before, but it's coming at the end. If it's a pre thingy, it can't appear at the end. That's their reasoning. But the thing is, it's not a preposition in that particular sentence. It's a phrasal verb.
Right.
So a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't say I'm, like, how is it?
Where are you at?
Where are you at? Yeah, where are you at? You should just say, where are you? Well, where are you at is a more physical sounding thing. Like if somebody asks me where I'm at, although come to think of it, I think people actually say that in a abstract way, but it probably started off that. Anyway, we don't need to talk about English grammar. Like I said, I could do a couple deep dives on this.
Right. Yeah, continuing through the questions. Did I say the Taiwan font is Biao Kai Ti? Yes, but I think I said the wrong tone on the second syllable there. I think I said Biao Kai Ti. So yeah, it's Biao Kai Ti. Yeah. And then we've got Simplified Mun that I listed as Japanese. I've seen ebooks out of China that use it. Yeah, so that's one thing, is that people are not careful about font use. So you will see stuff from China that uses Japanese fonts because they're not thinking about it. They can read it just fine, so they don't even really notice. And their computer has Japanese as the standard font to display stuff in, and so that's what you get.
Well, it could be also that your computer, because if it's an ebook, it could be that it's your computer settings.
Could be that too, yeah. Could be that it could be an issue on your end that you just need to change your ebook reader settings. Let's see, Edomoji Wawati.
While he's doing that, somebody asks, I'm late to the party. Did you cover background for fonts earlier in the session? Yes.
Yep.
Check the recording.
Currently working on my own Han graphical origin dictionary. I want to ask, what variations should I display for the head or character?
Yeah, our dictionary.
Yeah. Yeah, so in our dictionary, in Plico actually displays using the Taiwan standard in the traditional character dictionary and the PRC standard in the simplified character dictionary. I would say that's probably the way to go. Although if you're trying to do everything in one and you can't distinguish, I don't know. Using PRC standard is probably more universally recognized, but if you're doing traditional characters specifically, you're probably going to find more people who prefer the Taiwan standard. Yeah, that's and it depends on your priorities too. So,
Actually, I was answering somebody else's question. Somebody said, do you happen to know of any good dictionaries or textbooks that teach characters by grouping them by sound component rather than busho? And yeah, our
Oh,
dictionary.
yeah, man.
You can
Our
look up. You can
there's a
look up
there's a
the
link in the
system level data. Okay, go ahead.
there's a link to our dictionary in the description of this video.
Okay, so yeah, you can look up a character and then click on system data, and it shows you actually grouped by a bunch of different things. There's a sound component grouping, there's a semantic component grouping, there's a radical grouping. And by the fact you're using the term busho, it seems like you're probably not super familiar with our stuff,
Yeah.
because like that's like one of our holy war uh, topics is busho. But anyway, we don't need to go into that here. But there's actually another dictionary. Oh man,
So for
it was done
example,
by some
I'm going to put some
missionary.
examples up on the screen.
Okay,
And then if we go that
you
S
tap on.
button there, I'm trying to do it in a mirrored thing. But anyway, you tap on the S and that gives you the system level. So it groups by sound component. If the component shows up as a semantic component, then it'll show up there as an empty component. So this is our system of classifying character component types, and then as a radical. This particular one is not a radical, so it's not going to show up there.
Yeah, we don't. Well, if I open my mouth and start into that, it might end up.
Well, I think we can simplify by saying Pusho is it's a way of
Not
indexing
each.
dictionaries. So it's not related to character formation at all. It's a concept used for organizing dictionaries. A lot of people don't distinguish that from component
Component. Yeah.
or semantic component specifically, but that's going to lead you down. That's going to lead to a lot of problems. So recommend checking out our dictionary and our character course. The Chinese Character Masterclass is also linked. So we teach all of those concepts in detail there.
And also, there's a bunch of it. There's actually John wrote an article that's on our blog on the website, so that's totally free.
Yep.
And there's actually a bunch of things in there about character etymology and how it relates to Busho and all that stuff. Well, actually, etymology doesn't relate to Busho. How it doesn't relate to Busho, actually, but it does relate to components, which aren't the same thing. Yeah, it's a different layer of understanding.
It's called Chinese Character Radicals Don't Do It.
Is that the name of it?
Well, we've published it under a few different names. That's the current name.
Oh, it used to be called Getting Radical About Radicals.
Yeah, the Don't Do It version is expanded. It's got extra stuff in it.
Oh.
Oh.
I didn't know. I guess I haven't read our blog in a while.
I'll post a link in the chat here, guys. There is also, if you go to the site, there's also a Japanese version of the same article if you're learning Japanese. Let's see.
A way to see all the sound components listed together in one place. Huh. That might be an interesting thing to add to system level data. I'm looking at the last, sorry.
Yeah,
when John reads the question he
posted. Let's see. Oh, it's a CJK dictionary he's working on. So wants to make sure he shows all variations. That's a big project, my friend. Let's see. Latin versus Anglo-Saxon cultural conflict had a big influence on English. Yeah, that's for sure. Another video idea. Introduction to how to type or how natives input efficiently on keyboards. Oh yeah, that would be an interesting one. Especially when you don't know the pronunciation. Yeah. Have a much easier time learning characters if I could just see all the useful or relevant characters grouped together like that. Yeah, I recommend checking out our dictionary. We do that for any component that shows up in more than one character. We have system level data that shows all the characters it shows up in, at least within the most common 4,000 characters, and its function in those characters. So it
So,
sounds like that's what you're missing. Let's see. Tapping the S for some characters is missing other characters that use that sound component. So okay, there's two things that could be. One is that you're looking for a character that actually isn't in our dictionary, so it's outside of the most common 4,000. Another is that I think, Ash, isn't the system data still like one version behind the full dictionary? So if there's anything that we've added to the dictionary since the last time we updated system data, it may not be in the system data. But that should only account for a few characters. It's not very many.
doesn't EDSCO's code produce that stuff, and we usually get him to run it before we release anything. So I would think it's not behind.
I can't remember the last update we released if he updated the system data that time or if it was the time before. I know there was like one update somewhere in there that he didn't have time to run the code before we released it. So,
Well, if you want to know the answer to that question, give us an actual example of that happening so that we can look it up and see what's going on. Like I theoretically speaking, it's hard to know, but
yeah.
in fact, I would think it's more likely that there'll be more characters in the system data than there are in the dictionary because we added a bunch of data that's not necessarily in the most common 4,000, but we already had the data for it, so we just decided to put it in there.
Yeah, we did that.
But there could be characters in the system data that don't have entries in the dictionary because the dictionary is limited to the first 4,000 characters.
Yeah. Let's see. I think that your dictionary should also cover a bit more phonetic components because I see that probably a lot more common phonetic components don't have an entry. Yeah, so we prioritized doing entries for semantic components first, and then we only did entries for sound components if they are either common characters in their own right or they show up as semantic components in other characters.
Right.
So we will be adding entries eventually for all the sound components, but a lot of them are just sound components. So you're never going to find it as a standalone character. And it's not important to know the meaning because it's not a semantic component ever. So it's generally enough just to know the shape of the thing and what it sounds like and how it acts as a sound component, which all that's covered.
You have this thing, I want to answer this. I saw this. I would love to know about the entry for, I guess that's yuan, and that jiu, or wan, sorry, wan, is derived from, what are you basing that on? Like, what is your resource that you're using that tells you this is the case?
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing that too.
I don't, because I don't think that's the case, actually.
Yeah. I'm trying to look it up, actually.
Because we're using for this entry, 继续声说完新政, and I would probably believe him over most other resources. So unless it's like Chen Jian or Qiu Xigui.
Right.
Can you put that on the screen, the comment?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, so just regular Slitherwing.
Just a regular Slitherwing, yeah.
Oh, he's using Jishushen? That's funny.
Okay, so we'd have to go look that entry up to see exactly what he says. There are times, though, where in the dictionary we'll sort of gloss over some things. Like, the point of the dictionary is not to be a detailed etymological explanation. The point is to show learners what they need to know to understand a character form. And so sometimes if there's more like messy detail, we'll skip over that in the essentials version of the dictionary, and then we'll cover it in the expert entry whenever we add the expert entry for that character. So Yeah, I'd have to read that entry because I don't know off the top of my head what he says about it, but that could be what's going on there.
Yeah, like so. Oh, never mind. Good.
Do you guys have plans on publishing a physical books that expands on the Plico outlier information? Love to know more about
We'd
original
love.
definition evolutions. Yeah, we do plan on publishing the dictionary and probably uh, we'll add more to it. Yeah,
Well, he's talking about a paper version, right?
right. Um,
We've actually tried to do this before.
right.
It didn't work out,
Yeah, it kind
but
of part with the publisher, but
there were. So the problem was, as far as I understand it, the publisher was concerned that we already had this electronic version out and that they wouldn't be able to control it.
mm,
And so they were like, God, this is too complicated for us.
right. But yeah, we
They didn't
will.
say that.
Right. That was kind of the. But yeah, we will at some point. We do plan to publish a paper version, possibly expanded from what's in Plico. I'm not sure. Does Plico update automatically on the user side, or do we have to manually update to have the latest version? So by default, it updates automatically. I think there is a way to turn that off, though. So it could be that you have a setting that prevents that from happening, but by default, it should update automatically.
Wow, if you're reading Jishu Sheng and Liu Zhao, you're using some good resources.
Yeah, for sure. Years ago, or maybe a while ago, I emailed Ash about a proposal for a new explanation of ping. Do you remember that, Ash? That rings a bell, but I don't remember exactly the.
What was the proposal? Is is this the one we went back and forth a million times on? Is this the what is it? Wait, why don't you just remind me of what it was?
No.
Otherwise, I might lead into some long conversation that's not related to what you're saying. Is it? Was it the?
Well, yeah, while that person is typing the thing about ping, hopefully, we can sidetrack and do this. Example character that's missing the S sound component recently had to look that up and noticed it wasn't connected to the sound component. Bing. Let me see.
Well, then that's probably a one-off error. If there's an entry for bean,
No, there's not an entry in our dictionary for bean. There is one for bean, but
not for bean.
yeah. Although it is in the sound series, so if you go to the system data for bean, you can see right there, bean is listed there. So, but yeah, there's no full entry for that character in our dictionary. So if that's what you mean, then yeah. And yeah, that is the case. It's because it's not part of the most common 4,000. All right, let's see. Back to ping.
But it's part of that. I told you we had some extra data that we added in. That's why it's in there.
Right, that's why it's there, yeah. Forgot too, but I believe it was a paper on how a certain oracle bone graph shouldn't be interpreted as hu, but rather as ping. Proposed that ping should be a depiction of a stick used for striking. Also proposed that it should be the original form of. Let me find the name of the paper. Yeah, I don't remember that. Do you, Ash? Like, I vaguely remember it, but I don't remember any of the details of it.
I remember the exchange.
Right.
So the argument is that
Wong Sun.
Wong Sun? I don't even know who that is.
Hmm.
I mean, I'd have to look at their argument. It's like, so for me, I don't agree or disagree with an argument based upon how well I know the person. You know, like how well I know the person can make me less or more skeptical about what they're saying, I guess. But I still think even a guy that's wrong 99% of the time still might be right
Yeah.
on that 1%. Um, of, Although if it was a complex paper and it took hours to read it, I might blow it off because it just wouldn't be
Don't have the time.
the chances of getting a good answer, after all the reading. But yeah, I'd have to look at the evidence. It's not something I could answer off the cuff.
Yeah. Maybe we could crowdfund a physical copy of the dictionary.
Oh, dude.
I don't know.
I don't know if we're ready
I think
for
we've had our fill
crowdfunding.
of crowdfunding. I don't think we ever want to do that again. It's a nightmare.
Oh my god, we're still
Still traumatized
yeah,
by Kickstarter.
still traumatized about that.
Yeah. I don't think we'll be doing that. But no, we've got some publishers that we've been meaning to approach. We even have a sample of what a printed version might look like. So
Yeah. So we've done some work on it,
Yeah.
but we really don't have enough people working at our company. So a lot of stuff. It's kind of like if you're in a boat and there's a water leak coming in, and then there's a painting that's not finished. While that water is coming in the boat, nobody cares about the painting not being finished. I mean, it's just gonna have to wait until there's no water coming in the boat. It's kind of the
Did Ash ever say that he likes analogies? All right, guys. I think we've covered all the comments here. We're past the 2 hour and 15 minute mark. This is the longest live stream we've done in a very long time. This is a good one though.
no
I
wonder
really
I'm
enjoyed it. So you'll take the sample. Actually, there you can see it's not exactly the sample that we send to publishers, but it's exactly the same design in our free 100-character components PDF. Let me see if I can find a link quickly. If not, on our community, the Outlier Mandarin community, there is a course, the character mini course. It's a free course, and it comes with that 100-character PDF. But it's a nice design, if I do say so myself.
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
I didn't. I spent a ton of time on that thing.
Well, I've never forgot about the posters.
Right. Oh, actually, I have a PDF version I can put on screen real quick for anyone who's interested. Let me pull it up. Can we do?
Yeah, that Alex Adler book. He's not really into paleography, I don't think.
No. Let's see. Not that.
That's not a very pretty book.
Yeah. Where is my... There we go. Okay, so this is kind of what we envision a print version of the dictionary looking like. Although, like I said, this is a free PDF that we give out, 100 most common characters. So it's entries from our dictionary, but put into more of a print style format. So this is kind of our idea for what a print version would look like. We also have what's been extremely frequently requested for the digital version is to color code components based on their function. It was a little easier to do in print than it is in Plico, just because of the way Plico is set up at the moment. So, of course, a print version would also have the expert entry information too, not just this one only has essentials info. Print version will have the expert info as well. So, yeah. if anyone has publishing connections, let us know if they would be interested in this kind of thing. Alex Adler successfully crowdfunded his own book, The World of Kanji. To be fair, though, as much as the info isn't correct or accurate, the design is so beautiful. Yeah, it is. It is nice looking, but I think that's about all we can say about the quality. He talked to us before he did his thing, and we tried to point him down the right path as far as reliable sources, but I think he basically based all of his kanji explanations on Shirakawa Shizuka, who, yeah, was a very prolific scholar and did some excellent work actually on bronze inscriptions. And some of his stuff on bronze inscriptions is still like standard reference material in the field.
But he also drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Well, his character explanations were published in like the late 60s and early 70s. And they were even controversial then. Well,
that's not the problem is this. He thought he could reconstruct ancient Chinese religion via character forms, and then he used his reconstruction of ancient Chinese religion to interpret character forms.
Right, it's very circular.
I mean, if that isn't completely circular, I don't know what is. And it doesn't matter how famous or unfamous you are, that process doesn't work.
Right.
So,
but even if, that was even controversial at the time, but even if it wasn't, and even if it was really excellent work for the time, the field of paleography has changed so much since the early 70s that anything published back then should be looked at as like, could be still reliable, but there's a good chance that there's much better explanations available nowadays.
So somebody made a comment, and I'm not trying to be super picky, but you said, I like that your dictionary will include the references. I just want to say it does include the references. So here, well, it says reference.
Maybe hold it closer.
Right there. Well, it's not easy.
Yeah. There. So yeah, you can tap on the reference and it'll tell you.
And it gives you the full reference data.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Well,
I meant the printed dictionary. Okay. Yeah.
Of course. I mean, your information is only as valuable as where it comes from, right?
Right. Yeah. What do we have? Like 120 different references that we cite in the dictionary?
Yeah, there's over 120 references. I mean, Jishu Sheng actually appears a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not just because I know him. It's because he's really good at what he does.
Yeah. Somebody just rejoined the stream, I think. WTF, you're still live. Yeah, we like talking about this stuff, so we just kind of stayed on. Yeah. Started a publishing company in Taiwan recently. Comics and graphic novels.
Dude, I know a guy.
But I really want to publish a book that teaches Chinese characters in a fun and intuitive way.
Actually, we've talked about a bunch of times doing a popular version where we teach basic characters and we do it in a fun, creative way, but that the information that it's based on is actually solid.
Yeah.
So we would be interested in that. I don't know how much time we could put to it, but
right.
If we could hire somebody and then just kind of train them in our system and have them do it and then we edit it, that would probably be a lot more likely to actually happen.
A collaboration thing, yeah, would be much more doable. So yeah, reach out if you've got an idea. Let's see, and then the other, have to thank you guys for your content on learning how to research glyph origins, especially your dictionary, because it inspired me enough to write my own. That's very cool. You may also be interested, or you may not be because it may already be stuff that you know, but for anybody else watching this, we did an intro to paleography course a while back where we look at everything from Oracle Bones script up through, I think, clerical script, and looked at the evolution of the forms and how to do research on character forms and stuff. It's an intro level course, but for anyone that's interested in that stuff, highly recommend it.
Yeah, I wanted to make another comment real quick about the guy that made the kanji data or dictionary. I forget his name. Alex, was it Alex?
Yeah.
Man, it's not easy. I literally spent at least 7 years full time. I'm talking every day, all day. You can still go to our library, our office library, and see the insane amount of work. Like I've just got stacks and stacks and stacks of notebooks of notes from class and from books. But 7 years, and that doesn't even include the time I spent learning Chinese, because this was like my Chinese was already graduate level, like native, working with native or studying alongside native speaking Chinese speakers on the graduate level. It was already at that level before I even started into this. So if you include the amount of time I spent learning Chinese, it's easily well over a decade that I spent full time acquiring the skill sets to do this dictionary that we did. So
plus the time doing the dictionary,
which took
is
a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, and had to write a ton. Like I spent literally probably 3 months full time. That's not the way it happened. It was like partial time over a long period, but
right.
I spent probably 3 to 6 months full time writing code to make the tools to be able to do this. Like it's literally it boggles my. I did it, or John and I guess did it.
Right. Mostly
and it still, when I see it, it boggles my mind. Like I see the amount of, like I actually wrote a program to count the number of lines of code that were written for that project, and it was so much. I was showing a computer programming PhD friend of mine, and he didn't believe me. He's like, I don't think that's right. I think your counter's wrong. I'm like, I don't know, dude. That's like months and months and months and months of writing code. Like it was a lot.
Yeah.
So we have put
sure.
serious, and like I'm saying this to brag on the dictionary, not to brag on me, but like I know these people. Like William Baxter had his 75th. There was a conference in China for his 75th birthday, and the theme of the conference was bringing paleography and Old Chinese phonology or phonological reconstruction together. And for those that don't know, historically, it's actually gotten way better in the last like 5 years, but 10, 15 years ago, Old Chinese people, reconstruction people did all their thing on their own. People doing paleography did their thing on their own, even though both can greatly inform. Like I actually showed in my presentation where I was trying to figure out the early version of Xue to Xue, if that thing on the bottom was the building, or if it was 6, the number 6, or the character that represents the number 6.
Right.
And when I looked up the phonology for the number 6, I was like, holy crap, that's like almost an exact sound match.
Yep.
Like, so clearly, and the thing is, I asked Baxter to be sure, what did you base this reconstruction on? Does it have anything to do with the character 6? And he's like, no, it's absolutely unrelated. And it had to do with, I think it was they have these things they call soft initials that Jerry Norman, I guess he brought forth this idea, and the idea being there were prefixes, like they call them loosely attached prefixes, and these loosely attached prefixes existed and then they fell away, and it left a soft initial there, because if that initial had been the original initial, it would have been hardened via the same processes that hardened all the other ones. So that prefix being at the front of the word actually protected that initial. And there's evidence for this in Proto-Min. So they do it based on Proto-Min, which is not at all based on characters.
Hmm.
And then also that because the character 6, like Liu, right, starts with a L and it's Lo in Cantonese. And they propose, originally most people said it was Ruk, but then they say it's Kruk. But actually that comes from related languages, like the proto languages for, I don't remember which, I should know because I spent a lot of time on it, but it's been a couple of years now. Anyway, the K in that is based on like other proto languages, I think. It's not Tibetan, but it's some Sino-Tibetan language.
Right.
So, but anyway, the point is also, I think this is very important. I was an engineer for at least 9 years, and I have 2 degrees in engineering. So I spent a hell of a lot of time on hard science and logical thinking and all that stuff. And I think that background sets the stage to do this dictionary really well. Right. So it's like, and you see on the internet, people are arguing about stuff like, oh, no, it's this situation because this scholar says that. No, it's this situation because that scholar says that. Nobody knows the whole thing. Everybody's trying to figure it out. And actually, Jishi Sheng was, he was on my committee, my PhD committee for my PhD, and at our school you had 2 like 2, I forget what to call that in English, but 2 tests. Like you have this oral test where you have to stand up in front of a bunch of PhDs, and
I think
what's that called?
Orals or oral qualifying exam?
Orals.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not qualifying. Qualifying is when you're going from PhD student to PhD candidate.
Right.
I think they're orals. I think it's usually
or
called
your defense,
orals.
not your defense, right?
Defense. Yeah. Because I guess your quals could also be oral
Right.
driven. Anyway, we have 2 of those. You had one meeting with 3 people on your committee, and then the last meeting was 5 people on your committee. And so Jishu Sheng, when I walked in the room, he starts laughing and he's like, because there was some character, I guess, the character in my, so my dissertation's about a framework for, well, we use it at Outlier for helping people that are learning characters to understand how characters work. But I was presenting this as a framework for doing paleographic research, like basically a framework for understanding how characters actually work, kind of a replacement for Liu Shu. Although I didn't sell it that way.
We're going to do one of these live sessions on Ash's dissertation one of these days. So
yeah, we've been,
and also what it was like doing your PhD in Chinese in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So
dissertation quarantine during COVID.
Yeah, actually, I didn't have to buy all the professors dinner because everybody was scared to go out to dinner. Like everybody's like, oh, I think I'm just gonna go home, and they put their mask on. I'm gonna go home now.
Yeah.
They didn't want to go out to dinner because of COVID. But anyway, I walked in the room and Jishu Sheng starts laughing. He's like, Ash, trying to prove me wrong. Because I guess whatever I said about this character, I listed out what a bunch of scholars said about it. And he was one of them. And I was basically saying he was wrong. But I was like, oh, 老师, 我不是这个意思. And he was laughing at me, and he didn't really mean it.
Yeah.
But then he actually, because I was asking him, my original dissertation was going to have like 5 characters that went into a deep dive, and it ended up just being 1 character because, I mean, dude, this stuff takes forever, and everything I write was in Chinese, which makes it take even longer. But I had written, my last chapter is actually about 1 character, I think, or maybe a couple versions of that character. And but originally I was going to have 5, but man, it was a real time crunch. And so I asked, I think I only had 1 ready for that first meeting with the 3 professors. And I said, well, he goes, is this all, are you just going to do this character for your last chapter? I was like, well, I was going to do 4 other characters as well. He's like, well, is the quality of those analyses as good as this one? I'm like, I hope so. they're not all done yet. I'm still working on it. He goes, well, this is fine because this is excellent. In fact, in my next book, I'm going to use your analysis and quote it, give you credit for it.
Hmm.
So to say that that's, I mean, I almost cried, I think, when he said that, because
Right. That was 智,
to
right?
get that kind of, huh?
That was 知识的智, or 智慧的智, I mean.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, yeah. So it's about those two. It was about 智慧的智 and 知识的智 and their relationship and how they developed and whatnot.
Yeah.
But to get that kind of confirmation on this like mega year, like decade long process of doing all this stuff, and then finally, crawling through over the finish line at the last second, like literally the last second, like
you're supposed to
have, you're supposed to
with each day laid out what had to happen in order for you to turn it in by the deadline, and it was
right.
Nothing could go wrong.
It was a lot of stuff. Well, actually, that was true for a bunch of stuff. Just getting to Taiwan. So like I had 9 years. You're supposed to graduate in 9 years, but I was just going to wait for COVID to end, and I was actually going to run out of time. And the school called me and like, when are you going to come to Taiwan and finish your PhD? I'm like, oh, I thought I could do it online. Like, nope, can't do it online. You got to come here to do it. I said, oh, well, then I'll do it when COVID's over. You can't.
I have to do it now.
We're giving you an extra semester. Yeah, we're giving you one extra semester, and that's next semester. And after that, you have to start over again. And then, like, my passport was almost, there was like a month left on my passport. So I had to get my passport renewed. And then once that was done, and this is like stuff you send off somewhere and you hope people are doing their job, and then they send it back. And then I had to get a visa to Taiwan. So I sent that off, wait for that to get back. And then I had to get a landing permit. They added that as like an extra measure to be able to not let people come in if COVID, giving on what's going on, if a COVID crisis happened and they wanted to shut it down, they made this extra hoop to jump through so that they can, well, sorry, you didn't meet that criterion.
Yeah.
And then after that, I had to apply for a COVID hotel. And like I actually missed that deadline by a day, but they still somehow found a room for me. And so it was, dude. And then like getting all the stuff done for the PhD was the same story. Everything was like running as fast as you can, and even though you're completely exhausted and there's pain in your whole body, you're sweating, you're still running, and then you fall down and across the deadline. And like every deadline was like that. It was crazy.
Yeah, we'll have to do a whole.
I don't know why I would do all that.
That'll be fun. Fun for us, maybe not fun for you to recall everything.
Oh no, dude, it's from this safe standpoint in time, it's
a lot more fun. All right. Well, we've been on for almost 3 hours. We should go ahead and wrap up. Well, thanks for coming, guys. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully it was useful for you guys. I forget what our topic is for the next one. Do you remember, Ash? It was one you wanted to do, I think.
Well, I can look in the live stream channel.
Yeah. We have it here.
I think it's
where are you in your tone journey and how to get to the finish line?
Yeah. Oh, it's related to the tone training stuff I wrote.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll do one on tones and like the various stages you'll go through in learning tones, from basically 0 to extremely competent. So that'll be a good one, and how to bridge those gaps too. So, all right, guys, thanks very much. Yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
For the interaction.
Yeah, this
when you guys interact as much like that, it really makes it much more fun for us. Like, otherwise, it feels like you're talking to an empty. You're just staring at your computer, rambling about stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this was good. Thanks for all the great discussion, guys. All right, we'll see you in the next one. I think it's 2 weeks from now, or are we doing it next week? I can't remember. Anyway, we'll make an announcement once we're ready to schedule it. So we'll see you guys then. Take care. See you, Dr. Ash.
See ya.